Good morning, how y'all doing? Y'all good? Are y'all awake? I hope y'all are awake. I heard some no's out there. Look, I just got off work a couple of hours ago, and I don't drink coffee, so I'm going to have to feed off of y'all's energy, so you can't let me down, okay? You got to be there for me, man. I got to feel it, okay? If not, I can shut this down. We can do some jumping jacks. Wake up, man, do some Taebo. Do they do Taebo anymore? Maybe I just dated myself. Oh, well. But today I want to continue in this series. We're doing the 50 Shades of They. And I really love the direction that this series is placing our focus, at least my focus, because I know there's times in life when I don't pay attention necessarily to the people that have surrounded me, the relationships that I'm in. And I think it helps me to examine this area in my life because sometimes they become a blind spot, You overlook it. And a lot of times I deal with what I call spiritual malnourishment. You get to that point where you're having a tough time and you feel like you've been closer to God than you are right now. So you start looking in your life and you start seeing areas that you can improve. You say, well, I can spend more time in prayer or, spend more time in the Word, actually put the Word to use more in my life. Things that we shouldn't normally be doing anyway. But, of course, life gets caught up, right? We get distracted sometimes and we kind of get off path a little bit. But I realize when I do these things in my life, when I realize that I've gotten off path a little bit and I start focusing more on God, I realize when I get back around these certain people, these certain they that we're talking about, everything goes back. Like they pushed me off my path, And it's not that I'm saying that they're bad people. It's easy to say that the wrong people are really evil and bad people, but it's just that they're not pushing me further along in my walk with God. They're actually pushing me off balance and making it hard for me to stay on the path, And the thing is that it's funny, like I'm a parent, so as a parent, it's easy to notice it when it's in your kids, right? When their kid is hanging out with the wrong crowd, right? Their attitude starts slipping, they start acting different than they normally do. And being in youth ministry, as I've been close to 8 years now, it's evident. You can tell. You can tell when somebody just walks in the room how different somebody changes, and it's a negative change. It's not a positive one. But I think that it's easier for us to see it in our kids because we've backed up. We're not so close up to it. So that's why it's not really obvious in our lives when we have the wrong day. And like I said earlier, I wish it was easy. I wish it was something that they walked around with devil horns on their head, and they just had this appearance of evil. But the people I've dealt with that have been spiritually draining on me have worn khakis and carried a Bible, it's just, there's no stereotype. We got to get rid of that. We can't judge by the way somebody looks or how somebody professes they are to determine whether they're the right thing. You could get somebody that's completely inked up from head to toe. Got a green mohawk, got piercings all over their face, and might be the most spiritual person you've ever met. And then, the complete opposite is true, right? You can meet somebody that promotes their faith. Claims to be a Christian, can quote you scripture, attends church regularly, and be one of the most evil people you meet. So we got to get rid of those stereotypes. We can't look at it in that way. Because a lot of times we make assumptions based on that, and a lot of times assumptions are wrong. Like in my life, I get junk mail. Me and my wife get junk mail all the time, but the thing that makes it different is our junk mail comes in Spanish. And I don't know if y'all know, my last name is Hernandez, okay? So I'm assuming that these people sending it to us think that we have a Z in our name, so we speak Spanish. And the only problem with that assumption is that it's dead wrong. I can't speak a word, okay? I trip over my own name sometimes, But I believe that we have to get the right people in our lives, right? Because I believe we naturally have that intention in us to improve. We want to improve, right? If we want to get healthier or look better, we try to eat right. We try to exercise. And then if we don't exercise or don't eat right, at least we feel guilty about it, right? Because we got that intention, we want to do better. Your looks, most of us don't wear raggedy clothes unless we're going to Walmart here in Canton, right? I've been there. It's kind of scary. You know, at Walmart, when they have their own website dedicated to people who dress wrong, it's kind of bad. But, our natural intention is to look good, right? We cover up the gray hairs with some dye every once in a while, man. We try to straighten up. When we go to high school to get a diploma, we don't go there for the fun. We're trying to get ahead. College the same way. When we're on our job, we want to get that promotion. We don't go in trying to seek a demotion. We naturally want to improve. And I think it shouldn't be any different with our relationships. Our relationships should naturally improve our lives. Especially as a Christian, man, it has got to. Your relationship have to improve your walk with Christ. There's not an option. And the thing is that we got to keep this focus and we got to keep this area of our lives open for examination. There's a quote. I don't know if y'all have heard this quote, though. It says, friends are like elevators, right? They either take you up or down. I believe in that because I don't believe that any relationship is neutral, right? I don't think any relationship just keeps you centered. I believe it either takes you forward or it drags you down. And the difference is, you got to understand, I'm not talking about you can't just be friends with everybody, right? We're Christians. We're supposed to love everybody, and that's great. I didn't say you can't be friends, but there's a difference between friendship and fellowship. Fellowship is the people you keep around you. Fellowship is the people that stay close to you and influence you. And your attitude and the way you look at the world is influenced by those you spend the time with. We grow to fit our environment. So I think we should invest the time to make sure our environment's legit, right? Make it good. Make it positive. And the thing is that the fact that we're influenced by our environment, we're influenced by the people we're surrounded with. I think that's why in the Scripture, God refers to us a lot as sheep. It's not really exciting, right? Sheep. Psalms 100, God made us, we are His people, the sheep of His pasture. We're all sheep. Man, when I heard this and read this the first time, I thought, man, God's amazing. Of all the animals He created, why is He using sheep to compare us to, I know it couldn't be cats, right? Because the devil made cats, right? Am I right? There's no cat people in here, right? I'm just offending my daughter, I think. That's probably it. But initially, that's not flattering to me. It's not like sheep have this reputation for being smart. They're really kind of dumb, and I don't know, any sheep lovers in here? I mean, they're just naturally, it just seems like they're kind of dumb. And even if you could teach them something and make some of them smart, they're definitely not cool, right? They don't have nothing cool. They don't have no fangs. They don't have no claws. They don't have no menacing roar, right? They're just fluffy balls of cotton, pretty much. They don't do anything. They don't fly. You don't see sports teams taking that on as their mascot, the sheep, right? That's not going to sell a lot of merchandise, right? It's definitely not going to intimidate your opponent. But the thing you got to understand is, even though they're not cool, there's got to be purpose to it, right? I mean, God doesn't compare us to it just to throw it out there or to throw an insult to us. And the thing I realize is that sheep are followers. Sheep are followers, and what makes a sheep is it depends on what they're following. And God tells us that we're desperately in need of a shepherd to lead and protect. And I think God made this comparison to remind us of this. That look, no matter how built up you are, how big your ego is, and how great you think you are, you're still a sheep. You still need somebody to lead you. You still need somebody to protect you. The thing is, we have the potential, right? Sheep have potential depending on who they're following. And I like that sheep flock together. Sheep stay grouped together, and they follow the same leader. In other words, if one goes, they all go. And that can be good or bad depending on who you're following. If you're following somebody bad, they're going to lead you to something bad. There's a story I remembered happened in 2005 in the country of Turkey. Anybody been to Turkey? You just eat it, right? Okay. But in 2005, there was a flock of sheep, 1,500. And the shepherds decided their hunger was more important than watching their sheep, so they took off and went to eat breakfast. Okay, well, unfortunately, where they were grazing was right by the edge of a cliff. So, if you can imagine, one of the sheep went over the edge, fell to its death. Now, this is why I think sheep are dumb, because normally, I don't care who you are, you see that and you think, that's a tragedy, right? Glad it wasn't me. We lost Lamb Chop, but we ain't gonna leave, we're going to stay together. It's going to be good. But one by one, all 1,500 of those sheep followed that sheep. This is a true story. You can look it up. I'm not making this up. It's too good to make up. But if you're an animal lover, you're a sheep lover, there's good news. They didn't all die. 450 of them died because, they started piling up and it started cushioning the blow for all the other ones. So it was good. It was all right. So some of them made it. But here's the thing. If they were following the right shepherd, if their shepherds hadn't abandoned them, they would have never been led over that cliff. They followed the right shepherd, the good shepherd that Jesus calls himself, they would become disciples, right? Because that's what a disciple is. A disciple is somebody who follows Jesus. So this all started making sense to me that, yeah, okay, I'm a sheep, I'm in need of a good shepherd. And once I start following him, then I become a disciple. And disciples get led to green pastures. Disciples don't get led off a cliff. Disciples follow Jesus, therefore they lead those around them to follow Jesus. And that's the role of disciple, right? If we're going to be a disciple, to garner disciples, we got to get disciples around us. We got to have to be a disciple ourselves if we're going to want to be surrounded by disciples. And that's where that role comes in as sheep. And Jesus speaks about this in John 10. He says in verse 27, "My sheep listen to my voice. I know them and they follow me." They follow me. He says, "I give them eternal life and they will never perish." They will never go off the edge of a cliff. "No one can snatch them away from me, for my Father has given them to me, and he is more powerful than anyone else. No one can snatch them from the Father's hand. The Father and I are one." See, I think it's vital that we pay attention to those we're surrounded by. We make sure we're following in the same direction. We make sure we're disciples. We make sure that those we put around us are the same that put God at the center. It's like I said earlier, if we want to be surrounded by disciples that strengthen us, we have to be one to begin with. It's impossible to have the right life and have the wrong relationships. It just doesn't work that way. If you're filling your life with trash, you're going to attract nothing but flies, right? Flies are annoying. Flies make you crazy. But if you fill your life with disciples, they're like sheep. They're going to follow, and you're going to follow along with them and follow Jesus, the Good Shepherd. And the thing is, we just have to be that example worthy of imitation. We got to be. It's not good enough to call ourselves Christians. Like I said earlier, it's not good enough to put on the attire and carry the Bible and assume that we're just going to be right just because we look right. We've got to actually put forth the effort. And I'm not talking about being perfect. I'm just talking about being connected to God. Making sure those around you are connected to God and they help you stay connected to God. There's a story in the Bible that best defines this for me. And it's in 1 Samuel, and it deals with David. Everybody knows David. If you're not churched or you haven't been, reading the Bible, or you don't know anything about it, and this is your first time ever stepping foot in church, man, you probably know something about David, right? Because the story of David and Goliath, we all know. That's a metaphor used in all kinds of struggles between good and evil. But the thing is that David was a great man of God. Man, he trusted in God. He was anointed by God. He surrounded himself with people who trusted in God. He wrote most of the Psalms. God even said David was a man after his own heart. That's a great shout out, man. I would love that, man. I'd put that reference down on all my resumes. That'd be the first thing I put up there. God says I'm after his own heart. But the thing is that even as great as David was, I don't think he would have been nowhere near what he was if he hadn't surrounded himself with the right they. There was a guy that was his friend named Jonathan. Okay, and to give you a little backstory, this is how David's kind of life went up to this point. He defeated Goliath, right? He was anointed by God to be the next king of Israel. So, The current king, which his name was King Saul, was impressed by this, so he brought him in to play the harp for him, right? I think it would have been much cooler if he was playing the guitar, but, whatever. Maybe the bass. I don't know. But the thing is that eventually things got heated, right? And David was friends with Jonathan, and Jonathan was King Saul's son. So he was naturally the next to inherit the throne. But Jonathan understood that God already anointed David as the next king, right? And he accepted that. He was fine with it because he was a man of God. He trusted God's words instead of his own heart and said, that's fine, David, you're going to be king, so I'm going to put you up. And that's what the right they do. They push you ahead of themselves. They think about you before they think about themselves. So eventually, things between David and King Saul got heated, right? Because all the girls, it's always a girl. All the girls were singing, talking about King Saul killed thousands of men, but then when they sing about David, he killed 10,000s of men. In other words, he killed more. So this made him jealous. So he started chunking spears at David. So David, fearing for his life, takes off and goes hiding. And we catch up with this in 1 Samuel 23, verse 15. And this is when Jonathan goes out to meet David. He says, one day near Horesh, David received the news that Saul was on the way to Ziph to search for him and kill him. And this is the key. Jonathan went to find David and encouraged him to stay strong in his faith in God. Encouraged him to stay strong in his faith in God. He said, don't be afraid, Jonathan reassured him. My father will never find you. You are going to be the king of Israel, and I will be the next. In other words, I will be second. I'll put you first. It says, so the two of them renewed their solemn pact before the Lord. Then Jonathan returned home. But I think that one line in there is great. He helped David find strength in God. If there was any quality that qualified somebody as the right day, I think that's it. Somebody that strengthens you, that helps you find strength in God. Because the truth is, your relationships, the friends that you keep, they're either going to distort your view of Jesus or they're going to help keep him in focus. And I always say this, instead of asking when you're trying to figure out if somebody's leading you or leading you away, instead of asking what's wrong with the relationship, start asking what's right with it. If you can't find out what's right with it, then there's a problem. We can always find something wrong in every relationship, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's taking us away from the path we're walking for Jesus. But if you can't find nothing right with it, something's wrong. In friendship, in relationships that we keep, they should have a simple formula, and to me, that's the formula. In other words, if you plus them doesn't draw you any closer to God, then it's not a good thing. And like I said earlier, it's not about being mean to anybody. It's not about not being friendly. It's just about making sure the fellowship that you keep is one that's good. Now, we can look at David's life and say, you know what, he had problems, right? Because, of course, he committed adultery. And then he went on to murder. And you can look at that and say, well, even though he kept the right relationships, he still had issues. But if you read that story in the context that it was in, at that time he was separated from the people that had surrounded him. They had gone off to war. And it even says in Scripture that David was supposed to have gone to war, but he chose to stay back. So the people that helped strengthen him in God were away from him. And he was left to the wolves, and he fell off the cliff. The thing is that I believe in Scripture to help me through, and one of my favorites is Philippians 4:13. It says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And to me, as Christians, if it's our belief that God strengthens, then why would the people that surround us not do that too? Why would we surround us by anybody who doesn't strengthen us? You need to get rid of toxic relationships. I got another story for you, and you can look this one up, because this one's true too. And I like to use stories, because when I read them, I think they're crazy, but then I can always relate them somehow in my walk. But in 2012 in Russia, there was this woman. Now, this is going to get morbid, and I apologize. I know this is church. We're supposed to keep it up. But there was this woman in Russia. And in 2012, she was found to be keeping her husband's dead body in her bed. Okay? And the bad thing, I mean, not that that's not bad itself, but the worst thing is that he actually died in 2009. All right? So this lady is keeping her husband's body in there and it's decomposing. And I don't know if you know any medical jargon or what happens, but when the body decomposes, it is not good, okay? It's actually toxic and it's a bad environment and it can destroy your well-being. I mean, it can really harm you and affect you. And the problem with this is that not only was she keeping it, but she was having her kids feed and talk to it all the time. In other words, she was pretending like it was no big deal. She was pretending like it wasn't bothering her. Now, I can understand this as this is my wife, because if something happened to me, I guarantee she'd probably keep me around too. She loves me that much. And she probably thinks I'm so sweet, I'll probably decompose into like potpourri or something. It'd be all right. So if I disappear, y'all find out what she's doing. But the thing is that this is a toxic thing, and it is affecting her well-being, and she was pretending like it was no big deal. She was pretending like things were normal. And I think that's what we do in our relationships that are toxic. We keep them around. It's like dragging dead weight around, and we act like it's no big deal. We act like it's just normal, and it's just a part we should accept. And the thing is you got to get rid of it. You know, I think this is why Christians and churches, for that matter, become ineffective, because they're carrying around dead weight. And they're good at covering up by playing Christian karaoke, right? But instead of making disciples, they're carrying dead weight. And they're treating it like it's fine. See, disciples follow one another. Disciples are all headed the same direction, going the same direction, following Jesus. And when you don't have disciples, you get chaos. You got people going in all kinds of different directions. And all that leads to is hurt, distrust, and discouragement. And I think that we have enough discouragement in the world. We don't need it in the church, too. And the thing is you might be here, and you might have been hurt by a church or somebody claiming to be a Christian, and it might have gave you the wrong idea of what it's all about. And the thing is, that's real. I get it, man. I understand that completely, and I don't make light of it at all. But I also believe that the devil, I like to call him the enemy, I think he uses that to keep us from placing those right people in our lives, to keep us from trusting, making those relationships, to keep us from building ourselves and surrounding ourselves with people who are going to make us better and make us stronger. And we got to get past that. Because Jesus left us specific instructions. He said, make disciples, teach them to obey my commands. He didn't say accuse, judge, and condemn anyone. And the church shouldn't be about creating an addition. I always say that, man. I don't like to say things about denomination, but I grew up Baptist, okay? And it was my impression as a kid that people just came to sit. They didn't get nothing out of it. So I'm thinking, well, they're just coming to create an indentation of their butt in the pew. All right, that's all church is. And it's supposed to be more than that. And you're definitely not supposed to act like one, right? So that's what I'm thinking. I mean, I'm not interested in people that want to take up space. I want to run a race. You know, it says in Hebrews 12 to let us strip off every weight that slows us down. And to me, that says dead weight. That says toxic relationships. Strip off every weight that holds us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us up, and let us run the race with endurance that God has set before us. That's what I want to do. And the thing is that the right day, if they gather together and they all flock together and they all follow the same shepherd, will lead the church the way it's supposed to be and define it as the bride of Christ that it's supposed to be, and not turn it into a four-letter word. Because that's what I'm interested in. And you think about that. We're supposed to be the bride of Christ. See, God didn't tell us to go to church. He told us to be the church. And when I hear that the body of the church is supposed to be the bride of Christ, I ask that question, what kind of spouse am I being? Think about it. What kind of spouse are you? Are you kind that sits in a recliner and expects to be waited on hand and foot? Or do you serve and give all because you care about the relationship you're in? You care about the health of your union. See, because I believe we got a mission. The reason Jesus said make disciples is because we got to start getting our numbers bigger. In Matthew 7, it says that the gateway to God's kingdom is very narrow and few ever find it. But this is what struck me. The highway to hell is broad and its gate is wide for the many who choose that way. So see, I don't think we should be lacking in people wanting to get those numbers down. A church shouldn't be lacking in volunteers wanting to sacrifice themselves in order to remove as many as possible from the enemy's numbers. See, I'm all about subtracting. I'm all about subtracting the numbers of the enemy and adding to the numbers of God's army. And I want to be surrounded by those who feel the same way. Because there's going to be days that I'm not going to feel that. There's going to be days that I'd rather sit at home instead of follow God. Come up here and try to lead other people to follow God. So I want to be surrounded by disciples who help my walk. That's why I said it's necessary. It's not an option. We've got to surround ourselves with disciples. We've got to be a disciple to gain disciples. And the Bible gives us a glimpse of what it's like when we do this. When we surround ourselves with the right day, right? Disciples that follow Jesus. Sheep that follow the Good Shepherd. In Acts 2, verse 44, it says, "And all the believers met together in one place and shared everything they had. They sold their property and possessions and shared the money with those in need." See, it's about being second. It's about placing others above you. So they worshiped together at the temple each day, met in homes for the Lord's Prayer, and shared their meals with great joy and generosity. Great joy and generosity. When's the last time you experienced great joy and generosity? If it's been a while, maybe you need to look at the relationships you're in. And then it goes on to say, all the while praising God. They were in unity, praising God. So they were all following the same. Disciples leading disciples. He said they were enjoying the goodwill of all people, and this is another one I like. He said, "In each day the Lord added to their fellowship those who were being saved." Added. Right? Subtracting from the enemy, adding to God. See, when it's done right, when you're the sheep with the Good Shepherd, the disciple that's worthy of imitation, then God will surround you with the right day also. I've been here at Driven Life for probably a little bit less than a year. And it feels like to me this place is kind of like a lighthouse. And I don't mean to get corny with all the descriptions, but it feels that way to me, that it's like a lighthouse that beacons out into the darkness. And that people come here that are tired of the routine, They're tired of the Christian karaoke, church culture fakeness. They're tired of discouragement and disappointment. And I think that's a result of the fact that we're looking for something real in the right day. And that's what I'm trying to be a part of. And I'm asking you to do that with me also. Because here's the thing, man. I love Braveheart. You guys seen Braveheart? That's like one of my favorite movies. Man, I get pumped up when they're all standing on that field, and they're outnumbered. But guess what? All they're focused on is the enemy. And they charge. And they're not worried about who's next to them because they know they're protected. They're not worried about who's in front of them because they know they're protected. They're not worried about who's behind them because they know they're protected. And they run that race and they charge because they know they're guaranteed a victory. If you know me, you'll know that I love music, and I listen to music that builds me up. I love the word, and I love when people put it to music. And there's this modern day lyrical genius called John Foreman. He sings from a band called Switchfoot. I don't know if y'all have heard them, but he's got this line that I use all the time, and it says, "I want to thrive, not just survive." Man, I love that. I use that all the time. And that's the purpose. That's why I'm here. That's why I come to church. Susie was talking about it earlier, man. You have a bad week, but guess what? You get to look forward to this. And that's what I love coming here. But that's why I'm here. I'm not fine with a church or a body of believers that are interested in routine and barely keeping your head above water. Man, I want to walk on water. And the thing is that I understand from Scripture The one that did that did it because he was focusing on Jesus. He was following his call, and he had his eyes focused solely on him. Now, of course, he let distractions get him, and he started sinking, right? And I think that's what toxic relationships do to us. They try to sink us. They try to drown us instead of allowing us to walk on water. The thing is that I want to be in the flock that follows the Good Shepherd. Like I said, you get my back, I got your back. Celia also talked about earlier, it's been 3 years and she's had issues. And man, a lot of you knew a guy that went to church here, right? His name, Chris Wilson, of course. I didn't have the luxury of getting to meet him. But man, seeing the impact he's made on all the people that talk to me about him and tell me about him is unbelievable. And there's no doubt that he was a disciple, and I think it goes beyond disciple to like a burning disciple, to where it's just catching everybody on fire that gets around. And the great thing about that is that he hadn't stopped, man. Brandis came, and I don't want to mess this up, but she came in and showed me a picture. He preached to a group of kids last week. I believe it was last week. Man, he hadn't stopped. We shouldn't stop either. The teacher was going to introduce, Gavin's was his son, and he was going to introduce who his dad was. And she could have used a picture. She could have used just a description, but she used a sermon. And he preached to these kids. And that blew me away. But that's a testament to who he was. And that's a testament to what this church is. And I want to continue in that. Like I said, I want to get your back while you get my back. Be disciples together and lead each other. I've taken enough of y'all's time. So I'm going to pray real quick.